DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
Good evening and welcome to our Tuesday night drinking game where you can take your jug of root beer and every time Ben Stowe says it depends, you can have a swig of root. No, wait. No. That wasn't what we were going to do. That wasn't our show tonight. What were we going to do? We were going to do one where we're going to be talking about important things like microphones.
They're going to need something harder than root beer, I think.
Yes, we are going to be talking
sarsaparilla.
Talking microphones. We're going to be getting into a lot of really in-depth stuff. Oh, it's going to be a fun night, gang. We've got props. We've got exciting things to talk about because we're going to be talking about the right mic for the right application because there isn't a universal mic that works everywhere. Can I say that safely, Ben?
Yeah, although
no.
we have maybe one glaring exception to the rule, which we'll get into.
We'll get into. Okay, so there could.
Yeah, I was thinking about like what mic is this? Is this mic? I mean, what is it for? And we'll talk about it later, but this is the one mic that seems to be used for everything. Oh. But anyway, we'll get to that later.
So there could be the most incredible mic in the world.
Well, and it has its drawbacks too. So
and we'll get into that. So,
we sure will.
Just to give you guys a kind of a quick little look ahead, next week is our DJ Hangout week, which means that we're going to be doing our main live shows are not going to happen this way. We're going to be opening it up so you guys can come in and be part of the show and ask questions live and kind of carry on a conversation. It's more of a conversational hangout night. That's going to happen the last week of the month. That's what we are going to be doing, and that is next week. So next week, you're going to have Brian Red and Ben Stowe together sharing a thought.
What could possibly go wrong?
I think the last time there were people were falling asleep and falling over because it was like a 17-hour marathon. I believe Ben got done, showered, and went to work.
Yeah, it was sort of felt like it, But the time flew. We had a great time. Even when my my hard drive failed and I had to switch to my phone and gaff taping my phone to the computer screen to hold it in place. The group of people that was there really enjoyed the camaraderie and the conversation. So the time flew by.
So just to continue on our schedule ahead. So that'll be next week. Then we're going to have one more week, first Tuesday in March, and then we're going to be coming to you live from Las Vegas the next week. Exactly what time?
That's coming up, isn't it?
It is. It's only a couple of weeks away. It's like, holy cats, what happened? Somebody changed our schedule. That's actually 3 weeks away but yeah, so just a couple of shows away, we'll be coming to you live from Las Vegas and talking about all the interesting things we're observing in Las Vegas. And now that they've got, legal marijuana all over, things get more interesting in Las Vegas.
Our show becomes more tolerable? Is that the...
people, our ratings spike in Las Vegas when we're down there, and we hand out Twinkies too. So you put it all together. It goes through the roof.
Oh man, Ben is so easy going. I need a snack.
Yeah, exactly. We're just
I don't know. That was a bad impersonation, But I'll tell you what. It's funny though. I guess I'm not going to say who, but one of my factory reps, a guy that works for one of our manufacturers, sounds exactly like Tommy Chong. I mean, it is hilarious. I just, every time I just sort of picture like a Cheech and Chong episode happening when he calls me, like, well, hey man, I really appreciate the order, man. Thanks so much for the support, man. That's great. And I'm just losing it on the phone. I'm like, oh, you're welcome.
That's funny.
So anyway, he might be in Las Vegas. If he is, I guess I won't need to point him out because he's the one who sounds like Tommy Chong.
Yeah, we'll bring him on the show. That'll be awesome.
We'll find him.
We'll find him. That would be great. Okay, so let's jump into different microphones for different applications. Because you and I were discussing the topic for tonight's earlier today, and kind of going through our notes. I had two people who sent messages asking about microphones. One specific was asking for miking at a wedding, which we've talked about in the past with lapel microphones, and the other was talking about loud applications that their DJ booth, and they're getting a lot of weird anomalies and such. And it's like, interesting. Just about the time we're going to talk about it, we have the questions coming in. So yay, we're ready to go.
Well, there might be one missing piece of this show, and we'll talk about microphones, which are absolutely essential. We talk about it all the time with gain structure. You start at the input and you work your way to the output. So obviously, if you start with the wrong mic, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. But the very next thing in that chain is the mic preamp itself. And this is where having a good mic preamp and a good mixing board goes a long ways. And, certainly DJ controllers serve a purpose, but the mic preamps on many of those are just abysmally bad.
Is there
and give you very little?
Yep. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and they give you very little control. They give you very few tools. So many times we're seeing now people who are taking their controllers, and I do think like the Denon preamps are a little better than some of the others, but we're seeing now where people are putting controllers into a small live sound mixer, which then has some of those features in there.
So is there like a price range that if I'm going to be spending X dollars, obviously controllers go from 400, to get a semi-professional one on up. Is it, are the entry level, is the mic pick or the mic preamp a little bit less there? And if I get to, that 800 to 1,000 range, I'm getting better quality mic? Or is there really no correlation between the mic preamp and the cost of the controller?
I haven't measured them, but I'll tell you that when I'm speaking of bad, I'm talking about the top dollar ones. So I guess it might only get worse at the cheaper ones, but I don't think they spend a lot of, that just doesn't seem to be a priority for some of these controller companies. They just don't seem to really care too much about the mic preamp. They maybe they're fine for, like a hype man or something. I mean, they're not, but they're certainly difficult to accomplish any other real miking application with. They tend to run very hot. They don't have low cuts. They don't have any real meaningful EQ on them. So again, we'll talk about having the right microphone, and that's a great start. But some of these people who are having these anomalous things happen in their DJ booth, they might find that getting a small mixer with a decent mic pre and some of those features we're talking about is just well worth the investment. And I don't mean don't go get the $30 Behringer mixer. I mean, it has a mic preamp, but spend a couple $100 and get a half decent, little mixing board. And I can make some recommendations and I can help. But anyway, I just want to explain that.
Are you talking? We don't need
awesome microphone.
We don't need to drop names and such of different mixers and such because you do rep a lot.
Yeah, no,
of
and
them.
I'm not gonna.
Are we talking like a 4-channel, an 8-channel, or will that not matter?
Well, I don't think it matters too much. I think at that point it matters on how many mics they want to plug into it. But you can get some pretty decent little 4-channel mic, mic preamp mixers, and then they maybe tack on a couple stereo channels or something. So that's something we can talk about on an individual level with people. But again, you don't need to spend a lot of money, but that will, I think, give you some tools to solve some of your problems.
Sure.
We'll talk about that. I mean, we've got some really nice microphones laid out in front of me here.
Yeah, let's jump in.
I was just thinking to myself, all right.
Yeah, let's just jump into that. But I think that the idea of the controller going into a mixer, I've heard people talking about that, and they're having debates about that too. So I think that's something we should probably jump into on a future show of how to hook those together and things to be aware of when you're hooking from going from one unit to the next. So we should hit
I'm
that
down.
one. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, okay, let's talk about mics. So we're going to assume that we have a good mixer with a good preamp, which may or may not be a DJ controller, but we'll just assume that we have that part down. But we're going to have.
It won't be a DJ controller. I can just tell you that right now. If we're talking about a good mixer with a good preamp, I can just tell you right now. And you're offended. Prove it to me. First of all, shame on you for making bad preamps. But second of all, if I'm wrong, prove it to me. Send me one with a good preamp. I'll test it out. And I am a very humble guy. I'll come out here on the air and say, you know what? I was wrong. This controller has a good mic preamp. So there's your challenge. Accept it if you will. So let's talk about microphones. And I think it probably makes sense. We'll start off with probably the number one selling microphone in the world. That doesn't mean it's the best microphone, not even by a long shot, but it is one of the most common microphones in the world. It's been around over 50 years, or I think this is its 50th year. And that, of course, is the very ubiquitous Shure SM58. It is a dynamic cardioid. Means it's a dynamic, which means it doesn't have any internal circuitry in it that requires power, like phantom power, like a condenser. It generates an electrical signal by the moving voice coil, works pretty much exactly like a loudspeaker in reverse, and has a cardioid capsule. And we'll take a look at some polar patterns here in a bit, so I'm not going to explain that just yet. Although I think we did a show on that once.
We did.
Pretty sure.
We have done.
So
we've talked microphones on a few occasions. Yep.
All right, pause this, go back and watch that show. Not unless you're watching live, of course.
Yeah, then you can't pause it, because if they could pause us, Ben, think of how many times we would get paused. Every time they heard it depends, they'd be like, pause. I'm going to the bathroom and I'll fast forward. Okay, sorry.
So then I'm going to say, in no particular order here, we're going to stick with vocal microphones.
First off, the SM58, you said that's been around for how long, and have there been any major changes in the time that you have been involved with Pro Audio and using the 58s?
Only where they're made, but I think it's 50 years. I think it's 50 years this year or close to that. I don't know. It's a long time anyway. And no, it really hasn't changed. And that's a knock you could put against it. That obviously there have been improvements in mic design, neodymium magnets, and obviously things have changed in 50 years. And so that's why, the SM58 is really probably not one of the best mics out there anymore. Even Shure will say that because they have better mics. They have their KSMs, they have their betas. But two things about it. It's legendary for its durability, although not the windscreens. I think those can be dented by breathing on them.
Yeah.
But also, everybody knows the SM58. Every sound guy out there knows it. They know what they don't like about it, and they know how to fix it. So it's still probably the number one microphone out there. And now I think immediately I look past the SM58 to its beta equivalent, and beta is a bit of a step up in the Shure line, and that would be the Beta 58. Now, two things about this. It's still a dynamic, but it's a supercardioid. So a little bit tighter pattern, and the frequency response is a little better too. I think just right off the get-go for a vocalist, I like it better than an SM58. But again, there are people who like the SM58 better too, and we'll take a look at some of the differences, and we'll talk about where one of those might be better than the other.
Sure.
Well, again, I think categorically the Beta is better all around, but there's an old saying about, I don't know, I guess it's an old saying from about 2 months ago when I first said it.
2 whole months. Ooh.
It's a long time if you're a goldfish. The old saying from 2 months ago that I coined here is, if you put 10 sound guys in a room, you'd get 11 opinions. Okay. So these are just this sound guy's opinion, take it or leave it. Although I did call a friend of mine who's a touring front of house engineer earlier today, and just solicited some of his thoughts, and found that not only did he offer some good nuggets, but we were also in universal agreement on most things. Let's stick with dynamics, and let's talk about another vocal mic that I really, really like. About the same price as the SM58. little bit newer. This is the E835, part of the Evolution family from Sennheiser. Again, another dynamic cardioid, but I really do like that mic. I really enjoy it. And now let's bop over to condensers. And these require phantom power, which I can promise you your DJ controller does not have.
Mm-hmm.
So you would either need a decent mixer with some phantom power on it, or you would need a phantom power inserter into your signal. And at that point, you should just spend the money on the mixer for obvious reasons. And so in no particular order here, let's grab this one here. This is a Shure Beta 87A, which is this is a stellar microphone. It's a super cardioid condenser. Just a fantastic mic. And then here's another mic that I absolutely love. I mean, you see these on tour all over the place, just a killer microphone. And that's the EV RE410, a cardioid condenser here as well. Again, these are all condensers. And this one has a rubber grip too, which is kind of nice. It's rubber there, actually. Reduces handling noise, and I kind of dig that. And then just for fun, I thought, you know what, why not? Let's bring out some of the big guns. Here's a KMS 105, a Neumann, and this is about a $700 microphone.
Goodness.
Yeah, but you know what? You get what you pay for. That's just a killer microphone. It's excellent for high feedback situations. I wouldn't recommend this to a DJ, but you know, this is a microphone that is just, you know, you find out what you paid for when you plug into it. And in fact, I was doing sound for, during the campaign, I did sound for a presidential candidate who was running, and they're not going to say it doesn't matter who it was, because, you know, the check didn't bounce, and that was all I cared about. But I switched out the microphone on the lectern 3 times before finally settling on that KMS 107. And in fact, it was this very one, and ended up using that KMS 107 over the other 2 microphones that I'd selected first. It just was the best in this large convention center type setting where there was, you know, 10,000 people or something in this, you know, campaign rally, and it was some astronomical number, you know, and so it gave me the best results. And we went with it, and it sounded really good. So that's what I've got for handheld vocal mics. Now, of course, there are a couple of other options here, and I sort of feel like I'm getting ahead of the questions, but those would be ear sets. And this would be the preferred thing, I think, when you have an officiant, or you've got a presenter or a speaker. 2 reasons. One, unlike a handheld, these, of course, are hands-free because they go on your ear. And this is what I wear when I present. And 2, they follow you around, unlike a handheld. Either the handheld, you have to carry it, or it is on a lectern and it's mounted on a gooseneck. These are attached to your face and they follow you around. And so here's a Countryman E6. And there are many, many variants of this. And another excellent one, maybe, again, more DJs are buying the Countrymans, and I think their Countryman's perfectly adequate for the job. I think it's great bang for the buck. But if you just got money burning a hole in your pocket, the DPA, they make just a killer microphone, just an outstanding, stellar microphone from DPA. One thing that's probably worth pointing out as we get into frequency response and polar patterns here in a minute is in the Countryman package, you'll see these little baggies that have protective caps that change the frequency response of the mic. And so that allows you to change that mic to better suit the application in front of you at that moment. And so
give me an example of what one of those capsules would be better for than another. Because I've seen those little bags and such, and it's confusing to me as I look at those. It's like, well, what does this mean?
Well, let's take a look. I'm going to share a graphic with you and just sort of remind me we're talking about capsules in a minute, because I'm going to go back and show you what all of these 6 vocal mics we just looked at do. So and then I think that's a good segue back to why you might choose one of these mics over another, or why you might change that capsule. So let me just see if I'm smart enough to do this. Let's try this. All right. Do you see a graphic there?
Yep.
Okie dokie. I threw this together real quick. I was eating in one hand and typing in the other. So Hope this does the job for us. In the upper left, you should see the Shure SM58.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see two things. We see a polar pattern, and that polar pattern is showing us relative to the axis of the microphone. And one thing to note here is that Shure does all of theirs facing down. Sennheiser, Neumann, and Electro Voice, all of theirs facing up. So you just have to sort of visually flip that in your head to understand where that response is.
Okay.
But basically, am I still on screen, John, or just the graphic?
Just the graphic.
Okay. Well, so imagine if you were holding a microphone.
Oh, I can put you on. Hang on.
Oh,
now we're on.
All right.
Now we're
Let's
on.
do it.
We're in the corner.
Okay. So if we're holding this microphone like an ice cream cone or whatever here, when we're talking about the degrees here, this is 0 degrees coming straight down into the top. That's 0 degrees. And then this is 180 degrees. Okay. So when we take a look at this graphic, you can see on the SM58 that it doesn't have the best rejection off axis. It does allow a lot of sound to still come in, from behind it and beside it, although it rejects most of it. You'll notice that, for example, down below it is the Beta 58, which is much better at that.
I got to move us.
Right of it is the Beta 87, which is much better at it. And that's one reason people have trouble with SM58s feeding back with monitors and that sort of thing. Again, every sound guy kind of knows it and knows what to do with it. But I find the Beta 58 and the Beta 87 both much, much easier to use in that regard. The other thing we're gonna notice here, and the reason you see two sets of polar patterns there, by the way, is just to keep it from getting confusing. You'll notice that they're showing different polars at different frequencies.
Okay.
So the solid line on the SM58 represents 125 hertz, whereas the fine dotted line represents 800 hertz, and the dashed line represents 100 hertz. And then when we move over to the right, those solid dotted and dashed lines represent 2K, 4K, and 8K.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, another thing to note is that changes on the Beta 87 and the Beta 58. Those lines represent different frequencies. So you have to kind of, again, you have to really decipher the data a little bit. That not even one manufacturer is sticking to something consistent here.
Yeah, I'm noticing that.
Yeah, it can drive you a little crazy, especially when there's things that, like, here again, if we look at the Beta 87. We see a solid on the frequency response. We see a solid line and we see a dashed line, and there's no explanation for what the dashed line represents. And so I'll explain the best I can here with it. But first, I want to explain what we're looking at. So when we're looking at the frequency response chart, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this microphone's frequency response relative to a 0 dB point. From 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, 20 kilohertz. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what we see here is my mouse showing up on screen.
Yep, we're seeing it. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, happy days. So right here, we see at 100 hertz, the SM58 starts to break off, which is good because we don't want that. This was done intentionally. And we'll see that starting at 2 kilohertz, it bumps up. And that is really the meat of the human speech range. And then we see a little dip down here, and then it bumps back up. And so this microphone was designed as a vocal microphone, and its frequency response determines that. They've done some of that pre-EQ for us. So if we're stuck with the DJ controller and we don't have an EQ, at least the microphone is trying to help us amplify the sounds we want and not the ones we don't.
Sure.
Now, of course, in a perfect world, you wouldn't need an EQ, but usually you do. What we see over here on the Beta 87 is we see a bit of a reduction starting already at 400 hertz, which again is probably good. And then it breaks again a bit more aggressively at 100 hertz. What I believe this dashed line represents is something we call proximity effect. And that is the closer you get to the microphone, the more low frequencies are in that microphone in this case.
Okay.
And if we look below here, we'll see where this proximity line represents 1 centimeter. Over here on the Beta 58, Shure has given us some explanations, 1/8 of an inch, 1 inch, so on and so forth. Just no such luck here, so we have to kind of guess what that might be. And it's probably in the documentation somewhere, but it's not not readily printed on the chart for us. But what we see here is that the Beta 87 is a bit smoother coming up from 2K, less increase, right?
Yep.
And same with the Beta 58. And we'll talk about why that might matter here in a second. But here we can see the RE410 is even smoother yet. It still has a little bit of a bump in there, but it's a bit flatter microphone. And then if we look here at the E835, we see that starting at about 2K, we have a bit of a gradual rise, and then not nearly as pronounced dip here as we see on the other two mics. Now, which is right, which is wrong? It depends. Really doesn't have to be a right or a wrong. And if we look at the KMS 105, we see that it's really pretty flat. Now, something else we have to notice about the KMS 105 is actually here we select our frequency and the graphic changes.
Oh, okay.
So it's now that wouldn't happen here, of course, because this is showing all of our frequencies. But when I change my frequency here, the polar pattern will change. So instead of having dotted and dashed lines, they just let you click on a frequency and see it. But anyway, here we can see it's really pretty flat through the speech range. Tiny itty bitty bump between 2 and 5, and then a bit more of a pronounced bump up there where you get your hard S's and stuff, and that sort of thing. So what's better?
Yeah.
Right? That's the question on your mind, right?
That's my big question. Burning question. Potentially I can't sleep at night question.
Well,
move your cell phone. We're getting some weird stuff.
How's that?
Yeah, just move it off the way because we're getting some static. I moved mine away, so okay. I think it must be in your side.
On.
Well, we'll go and we'll see if it's
all right. So the phone's a long ways away now. So
yeah.
The answer to your burning question that's keeping you up at night is it depends. Let me give you some scenarios. So let's say that we've got a high pitched voice. Somebody who's singing a bit higher, that sort of thing. I would say I would probably go for like the Beta 87 or Sennheiser 865, which is no coincidence that both of these are condensers, and both are, the 865, of course, is a, excuse me, the 87 is a supercardioid.
Yeah. There we
my
go.
brain had too many thoughts trying to come out at once. Again, they're going to be a bit smoother in the upper mids, and you can see that on the chart here. I got to move your face out of the way, but again, we see that smoother transition as opposed to here. One thing that my friend Calvin, the front of house engineer, wanted to make sure I mentioned was don't boost to 4K. Don't do it. It's already done a little bit for you on the microphone, so don't do that. If you need to cut some other things, go for it, but don't boost there. And so for those higher pitched voices and that sort of thing, I would say a smooth upper and mid range, and probably something like the 87 or the 865, or even the KMS, of course, because it's pretty flat there, would be good. And I think the 410 would probably be an excellent choice for that as well, looking at the graphics here.
Sure.
So what about the opposite? Let's talk about somebody who's got a very deep, boomy voice. There, I might actually go for a dynamic, and I might even consider an SM58 at that point. But probably, again, I would go for the Beta 58 or like a Sennheiser 845. So we're sticking with dynamics, dynamic cardioids or super cardioids, something with a tight pattern, and we're not going to go condenser at that route. Now let's talk about our hype man, like a DJ or something who, who's got to get on the microphone and just kind of lay into it. And I'm not talking about necessarily a master of ceremonies at this point, someone who's speaking measured tones. I'm talking about the hype man, right?
Yeah, yep. Up there yelling and screaming and.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of what you do during your presentations, if I remember correctly.
What's that?
Kind of what you do at your presentations, if I remember correctly.
You don't. No, I have my moments. Here, I would say, again, I would go dynamic for sure, without a question. Not a condenser. I would go dynamic, and I would go with a cardioid like our 835. Here, the SM58 might be good. Evie's ND76 is outstanding for this, actually. But I would probably go with the Beta 58 over the SM58. And one of the reasons for that is, what do hype men do? They cup the microphone all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And the SM58 gets a pretty ugly bump in it when you do that. You know, it just, people do that. And I find that the other mics we just talked about, the ND76, the Beta 58, or the 835, I find that I fight them less when that cupping occurs. And of course, if we EQ for the cupping and they uncup the mic, now our EQ is wrong again. So these mics aren't nearly as vulnerable to big changes that way. So I tend to like those. And they also, you know, again, they're dynamics. They'll take that abuse. You know, you can scream in them, and you know, they're going to handle that.
I did not know that.
So that being said, you know, that would help us determine which capsule we, you know, want to put on our Countryman microphone here, to determine, do we want it to be a little brighter? Do we want it to be a little crisper? You know, are we looking for any more presence in any particular place? Are we looking to reduce something? Sort of look at our choices there, and noting that they have the same frequency response charts as these, we can kind of decide, you know, what do we want the mic to pick up more of?
Okay.
Let me show you a really good example, and then we're going to move on to instrument microphones here. I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I'm going to share a different screen with you. So what I've got here, maybe.
Yep, polar pattern.
Okay, SM58 versus Beta 52. Is that what you see?
That is correct.
Oh, good. The Beta 52 is probably my favorite kick drum mic for kick out. We'll get into that in a second.
Sure.
And so what I thought, you know, what a great way to compare two different microphones that do very different things. One for a kick drum and one for a vocal mic. And we can see the difference in the polar patterns. We can see how, as the Beta 52 gets higher in frequency, it starts to really focus. And we can also see how the Beta 52, again, depending on proximity effect, and I tend to put it about halfway into the port, but, you know, sort of see how I like the sound. But it also has this really big bump up here at about 4K. And that's because that's where the smack of that beater on a bass drum is. And so it's giving us that attack as well as the boom. You know, it's designed with some of the characteristics that most sound guys want from a kick drum. They've sort of built that into the microphone. And of course, we just don't want that with the vocal mic. We want something very different. So the manufacturers designed these microphones purposefully for these different things. And that's why we have different mics for different things. And I've got a few to show you.
No.
So let me just pause here for questions, and then we'll dive into some more.
The questions we're getting are on wireless systems and body packs and such. I think everything. There's a lot of good questions, but there are things that aren't related to what we're talking about right now. So let's look at those at the end.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, and you know, again, people can message me. Right now is a good time to get wireless too. There's still some great rebates and things going on, so we can talk about that.
Yeah,
let's kick off our little instrument parade with the Beta 52, since we just got done talking about it. We can say it looks different. It looks weird, you know. It's got a little mic stand mount built right into it. There's our XLR, and we can stick this thing in the port of a kick drum, and you know, depending on adjust the angle to get the sound we want. But that is a microphone designed for kick drum. Particularly, I use it for kick out, and then I would use this, which is a Beta 91, for kick in.
Okay, give me, what's the difference between kick out and kick in?
I would put this inside the kick drum because I want to use this to pick up that front head where the beater's hitting. And then this mic here, I would then EQ back a bit to get just more of the body and the resonance. Depending on what I'm doing, sometimes I'll even just use this one alone because it's a bit snappier. You know, it's designed as a boundary microphone. In fact, this one has a selectable switch on the back where we can change the frequency response of this microphone itself. So
that would literally go in the bass drum.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep, absolutely.
So you take apart their drum and put it in and put it all back together?
No. Most bass drums have portholes. So you can just stick it in through the porthole. The same porthole that I would then stick this one in maybe.
Gotcha.
And notably, another mic that works really, really well on kick drum, ironically, is this one, the RE320 that I'm speaking in.
Yeah.
Sort of one of those Swiss Army mics, but it's not the one I was talking about.
Ooh, we're still waiting on that one.
Yeah, we're going to hold that one for last, I think. But here's a RE320, and here again, you can see a little selectable switch. It actually really sounds stellar on kick drum. Okay, so there's our kick in and kick out. Let's just stick on our drum theme here, and we'll go with this is a mic that I've used a lot with toms, particularly rock toms. It's the Sennheiser 604. Has a brother, the 904 as well, but you can see it's designed to clip onto a drum here. And then we have an adjustable head so we can change the sound we're getting off that drum. You know, we obviously don't want it to be too much attack. We want some body and some resonance as well. But maybe, you know, we maybe want a little more, just whatever you want, really is what it comes down to.
So now what would if a person had that graph we were looking at, and we saw with the kick drum mic that it had that bump up towards was it around that 2,000 range, somewhere in that ballpark?
4K,
excuse me.
4,000. Yeah, I didn't put these graphics out.
How would it differ? Any ideas off the top of your head?
Let me just show you. See if I can here. See if I can do this. It's going to be better, I think, to show you.
Okay.
Let's see. I could have made another graphic, I guess. Oh well. I didn't think you'd ask. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we were talking, and you've been showing those so well, and it's like that. Because I've wondered about that.
Again, I was making those while I was eating, so I sort of did that quickly. Maybe I can. Frequency sheets. Hey, there we go. Let's go. Frequency diagram. Just open it, please. And of course, they shrunk it quite a lot. Well, here we go. See if this will work. Bear with everybody. Thanks for your patience. I appreciate you. All right. Is it showing up?
Yes.
So again, think about what we're using this for. A tom, right? Probably particularly rack toms. And we can see that it's pretty flat, but a little bit of a bump there between 2 and 5. And then, it tapers off a bit at the top end. And here again, there's proximity effect. And that's why this thing angles and adjusts. Because again, depending on how it's angled, it's going to depend on what sound it really picks up. But it's kind of like what we might expect to hear from a tom. I didn't show the other tom mic that I want to show you.
That should give us an idea. Then I would think it's going to be semi-similar.
Yeah, although, another mic that's frequently used on toms is, I'm going to skip this one and go to this one first, is the SM57, which is the cousin to the SM58. Very similar capsules, but we can see doesn't have a ball on top. This is also used on guitar amps like crazy. I actually like it on snare, but sometimes you see these used on toms as well. I like the 604 or the Beta 98 AD better on toms. Another mic that just came out that I really like on snare and some toms is the EV ND44. Here again, drum clip, swivelable head. I think they just did a killer job on that mic. It's just a dynamite little microphone. So thrilled with that. Got to save my Swiss Army mic because it's one that's used on a lot of toms, but it's used on so much other stuff too. We just got to wait on that. So it's killing me here. It's throwing off my groove.
Yeah, you're just out of sync here right now.
So we talked about guitar amps a minute ago. Here's another one that's designed specifically for guitar. This is the Sennheiser 609. And a lot of times you'll see these draped over guitar cabs and designed, they're great mics for that. In true attention deficit fashion, we're going back to drums. Let's go to, and you know what? I didn't bring a couple of my best choices for this. Again, I just kind of raided the office as I was leaving the door. went to my mic cabinet, mic trunk, and said, well, let's grab a bunch of stuff. But this one is really, really nice. We lost you, John.
Yeah, I know. I'm just my little heater tipped over.
Oh, don't burn your place down! My goodness.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I gotta move that.
Typically for overheads, although again, our Swiss Army knife appears on overheads too. But typically for overheads, we find condensers, and certainly for hi-hat and that sort of thing. Here's a good option, the new ND66 from Evie. I like this because it has a selectable pad and a selectable response, and it has a swivelable head, and it locks. So that's a cool mic. Other strong contenders would be KSM 137, SM81. I use those all the time on hat and that sort of thing. That's sort of a standard. And then like the E914, I use that a bunch. But probably the 81 or the KSM 137 are my two choices for overheads. But again, don't count out this Evie mic. It's a great mic. And I think one of the things about the new Endyme series from Evie is they did a really nice job on them. It's just taking some time for everybody to get their hands on them. And, we develop habits.
Sure.
You sort of just get stuck doing a thing away. And then, again, it just takes some time to work that in. And for me, it's also because I work a lot with nationally touring acts. It takes some time to convince them, they don't really want to take the time to listen to it. They just want to go with what they know.
Right.
So, but I'm really impressed with this new Endyme series of mics, and I think we'll see more of them work their way in. So just worked with a national act last week and convinced them to try some ND66s, and that's now what they're using. So I didn't do that out of love or loyalty for Evie. I've got a ton of Sennheiser mics, probably more Sennheiser and Shure by far than anybody else. Love Shure. I did it because I really liked the mic. Mm-hmm. I thought it was better suited for what they were doing. Let's see, what do we have left? We have a couple of unique specialty ones here. This one is designed specifically as a boundary microphone. It is a bit the bane of my existence. This is the PCC 160. And I've used these, for example, with like river dance type shows, Irish shows where I've got people dancing on the stage and I need to pick up shoes.
Okay.
So I'll have these on the downstage lip. A lot of times we also tape lavaliers to the dancer's legs. And if you want to see a headroom phase and time nightmare, that's it. Because we have different arrival times from those lav mics to each of these boundary mics to each other. It's a mess. That's another show. You just sort of manage, try not to get thrown off. This one I should have mentioned under vocal mics because it's what it's for, but I kept it under my specialty microphones category because of its unique look and shape. And that is, of course, everybody calls it the Elvis mic, but this is the Super 55, and then there's the 55 SH. Oh, this is the 55 SH. I'm sorry. And then there's also the Super 55. And we have a couple special edition of these left that are powder coated black.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome.
Really sexy. Yeah, I got just.
Michael's been using that. He took it to his practice practice system in the other room.
I think we have like 3 left in stock. Is all we have. All right, and our last specialty mic before we get into
let's talk about that mic though.
All right.
What type of element does that have? Where would that fall in with our because that's a Shure mic. Mm-hmm. Where does that fall in between the 58 and the 87 and the Beta 58 and all that?
This is going to be very similar to an SM58.
Okay.
Very similar. The Super 55 is I think actually is the same capsule as the Beta 58. I would have to verify that, but I believe the Super 55 is literally the same capsule as the Beta 58.
How would you recommend? Because I've got again this 15-year-old rapper who wants to use this when he does his performance for his song, his Dusky Bro song. That's a shameless plug for my son's song that's on SoundCloud, by the way.
I love it.
So he wants to use that microphone because he thinks it looks cool. But I don't even know how to hold the thing if you're going to be singing with that mic. Does he?
Well, I would say, you're probably going to grab it somewhere around here. It obviously is designed to mount on a stand.
Yeah.
But if he's gonna hold it, you can either hold the mic here or on the stand, and you're gonna sing right into the Shure logo.
Yeah.
So
cupping it in your hand is a no-no.
I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do that. I don't know. Again, there's so much open body, and I can see the capsule in here a little bit. I'll look through with the light. There's so much open body. I don't know how much that's going to change it.
Right.
It'd be worth trying and seeing, but I would recommend not doing that.
Yeah, he hasn't let me watch him do this song live yet. So
depends.
Okay.
If you know what, it depends. If I was his sound guy, I would certainly discuss it with him. I would share my opinions with him based on what happens when he cups it. But if he's famous and he's touring and he tells me I'm going to cup it and he says I'm going to cup it and you're going to deal with it, I'd say, okay, sounds good. You're the man, again, artists want to sound good, but sometimes how they look is more important than how they sound, it may be in that case. He might say, no, I'm cupping the mic. And that's all there's going to be to it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was really adverse, I would try to talk to him about that. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of cupping mics, here's a mic that's designed to be cupped. And this mic serves a very specific purpose, and it was designed really to serve one thing, and it does a really good job at it. Want to take a shot in the dark what this mic is for, John?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, it looks like something from the 50s where they were doing the communication, or even
was it the avocado green that gave it away?
Back in the 40s, and for World War II, they're trying to call in the bombers to take out a gun embankment or something.
Well, it's close, but not. It was designed for harmonicas.
Close. Almost. I was almost. Really close.
Yeah, you were almost there. But anyway, that's
how we knew it. Harmonica, yeah.
Yeah, that's the 520, but it's affectionately referred to as the green bullet for obvious reasons.
Yeah. I did not know that.
All right, so trying to push us along here to our Swiss Army mic.
Yeah.
It is the Sennheiser 421, and this is the 421 2. It has a selectable roll-off on the bottom. You can hear that clicking.
Yeah, what's that mean?
So this is changing the pattern. It's rolling off more of the low end the more we turn this.
Okay.
Again, changing that frequency response of the mic for us. This mic has about 120 degree wide pattern looking right into it this way. So it's a very wide pattern, which can be good and bad.
Yeah.
You see this mic used all the time on toms, but I've had people tell me it's a great saxophone mic. I've had other people say they love it on clean guitar. I believe Aretha Franklin sings in this mic. Golly, it's used on overheads, but it's a dynamic as opposed to a condenser. It is a mic that you find being used on all kinds of things. So you might say, well, it's the perfect mic. No, it's not the perfect mic because there's a reason they make other ones. And the one thing that everybody hates about this mic universally is the mounting clip, which is plastic and prone to coming out.
Okay.
I don't know if Sennheiser just had to find a way to not make the perfect mic.
I could just see in the R&D. Okay, we got this mic and it's really good. It might be too good. What can we do?
It's perfect. It's going to kill every other mic. What can we do to sandbag it? Yeah.
Yeah, we got to do something.
I know.
Quick,
let's
call
put a lousy
Fred.
mount on it.
Fred's always got bad ideas. Fred, come on in. Yeah, okay, Fred, how would you? Plastic? Genius, Fred. I could just see it.
Plastic that unclips if you touch it.
Fred.
These mics go nose diving.
You get a raise. Everybody. Oh, sorry.
If you want fuel for the conspiracy, here it is. This is the MK2. It's the second version.
And it's still.
They could have fixed the mount.
They could have fixed it. Fred has got a career there.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah. But here again, it's, gosh, if you want to see a street fight, 10 sound guys in a room and tell them to mic something, in fact, I witnessed this. I was down in Baton Rouge at the Personas headquarters, and we shot a show down there, and that's what they did. They brought in a band, an actual, recording artist band. And then they had 10 sound guys, just happens to be literally it was 10. And they said, okay, we're going to mic and mix this band. And boy, there was one guy there who was just kind of going nuclear on everybody else. I kind of actually just sort of left and hung out with some other engineering friends down there. And they said, are you going to go in there? And I said, I spent a lot of time on that board today. It's a great board. I said, I've mixed a lot of shows. I don't really need to do this right now. This seems like I don't need to be a part of the chaos. You got different personalities and different ideas. And you got the one guy yelling at the other guys, and the other guys aren't necessarily yellers. And so they're sort of, it's just, I said, nah, I don't need to be in that. And I thought, I love Personas. I'm using a ton of Personas gear here at home. I got a Personas interface, my Personas monitors, my new Trembler sub. This is not a Personas thing. I love Personas, but whose genius idea was it? Fred? Whose genius idea was it to put 10 sound guys in a room and say mix? I mean, just that's asking for disaster.
Just see that one in the boardroom. So I got this really great idea. It could become a reality TV show.
It really could. It really could. This is the kind of thing that
we lost 10 sound guys.
Survival sound guy.
And then somebody's like,
I don't know.
Fred, bad idea. Let's put 10 strangers in a house in New Jersey.
With a soundboard and a band.
Yeah, it'll be great. It'll go over well. Oh, man, all these great ideas.
I really enjoyed it. And to me, again, it really was kind of mostly the one guy that was kind of wrecking the vibe, because I like to watch other people mix, and I like to see what they do. And, that's how you learn too. You say, I would have never thought of that,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I never dreamed of using an RE320 on a kick drum until somebody said, hey, that sounds great on a kick drum. I'm like, really? And I tried it, and I was like, wow, it does sound great on a kick drum. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with hearing other opinions and seeing other people do it. And at the end of the day, you don't have to agree with them. You can say, oh yeah, that's interesting. I would never do that,
Yeah.
So.
Well, did you do the passive aggressive Minnesota thing? Oh, that's interesting.
I'm a little more, I just kind of say, well, that's different. I wouldn't have thought of that, and then just don't do it.
There wasn't enough Minnesota passive aggressive in that.
No, I'm pretty laid back.
Thought of that. Yeah, come on. I gotta work on this.
I definitely have my feisty gear. I'm a very strong competitor. I really hate to lose, but I pick my battles really, and that's not one I don't care. I don't need to convince them that their way is wrong and mine's right. You sort of say, well, that's neat. I saw it and I'm not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now if it was a mixing competition, game on, I don't know, but who judges it? The listener? I mean, that's pretty subjective too.
Yeah.
I just had a college class visit our warehouse, and we set up some speakers and brought out one of my Digico desks and played some tracks and showed them some things. These are, future audio, people or whatever. And one of them asked me, he said, so what do you want it to sound like at a show? And I said, well, what the artist wants it to sound like. I said, a lot of times I'll try to make it sound like the album, if that's the plan, but sometimes artists rearrange things, and sometimes it sounds better live. I think sometimes there's a little more life to it. But I said, whatever the artist wants. If I'm mixing like a community event or something, and I love those because I've got friends that are amateur musicians in town. Well, then I mix it the way I want to. That's kind of a rare treat for me. But usually I'm trying to make it sound the way the artist wants it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess that's a great question. But yeah, you wouldn't think of.
Well, it was a good group. I really enjoyed having them out there. It was kind of neat. And there was a couple times I saw them give me that same Minnesota passive aggressive look when I did something. They kind of went, And I said, "What are you thinking? You know, what do you like? You like a little more body in the toms? What you know? Because I think we were doing compressor at the time, which that's a great thing for vocals, by the way. Use a good compressor and use it well. That's not microphone related, but you'd be amazed the difference that'll make.
Yeah.
But you know, what I was telling them is, you could be right and I could be wrong. You know, this is artistic. This is the way I would like it, but you may like it differently, and that's okay. That's all right. You know, that's the artistic element of making music. The mixing consoles and all the ancillary things connected to it, the microphones and the way we use them, that's our instrument. That's how we make music. But again, you got to be on the same sheet of music as the artist, because it's their song.
It's their, yeah, it's basically, if you aren't making them happy, you're not coming back.
Probably not, you know, and you know, you're maybe ruining the fan experience. You know, I always think about the people that bought the tickets that are in the audience, you know, and I think I want them to leave saying, wow, what a great show. It sounded good. I had a good time, you know, that sort of thing. Sometimes there is a creative disagreement with the artist. It's the artist's music, you know, their way goes.
Okay. We got like 30 seconds because Brian's going to start knocking on our door. The question, we're not going to get to most of the questions, and I'm terribly sorry. We're going to have to come back and talk about, maybe next week, this could be talking what mics and such. The question, I think, Gus, would be a good way to end is the best mic for DJ vocal to be using if a person was using their controller, which is what most of us have. What would you recommend for a typical male DJ?
I'd go back to my hype man mentality. I would say SM58, EV-ND76, or Sennheiser 835.
Okay.
I think any of those three, and I think there's a bit more high-end presence, a bit more clarity from the 835 or the 76. So I guess I'd say those two, or the Beta 58. The most important thing is that you buy it from me.
That is the most important thing, and I definitely think we got to dive into. I think our next show we should talk about that. Where we do talking sound, we need to talk about how to hook a controller to the mixer, and then how to deal with compression.
Mm-hmm.
I think those two areas.
Compression is a show all to itself, John.
Well, then we just show the wires go out, wires go in. Okay, now let's talk compression. You know, see how quick I did the wires out, wires in thing? It went really quick, and then we can talk about compression. It'd be so much fun. Yes? No? Maybe?
We could, maybe. I mean, yeah, I suppose.
We'll have to.
We should talk about gain structure before we talk about compression, because that's going to be an issue when we start connecting two mixers together.
So then we got gain. We're back to gain structure. Not when we have to do live in person. So. And then
so when are you coming up? When you come up, we're going to do a gain structure show.
When does the ice cap start? When does the ice cap start to recede? Past Bemidji.
June.
You know, the ice cap. That came down. Now it needs to go back, so then I can come back up. So right now, the Yaks and Yeti and all those things are probably running around town.
They're not running anywhere. We just got 16 inches of snow.
Yeah, they're not running there. And if they're slow enough, they're being cooked and eaten because there's nothing else for food that can make it up there.
The smart ones are bedded down. It's supposed to get down to -7 now. So, you get all that snow, and then, and then it gets cold. And I'm ready for spring. I'm not necessarily ready to go to Vegas, but I'm definitely ready for it to be warmer spring around here. So.
Okay, well, we're going to jump again because we've got it'll be about 5 minutes, about 5 after 9 Central, 5 after 10 Eastern when we get Brian and I back with our next show, because we had so much to cover tonight. It's a good show. I even learned something. Thanks, man. We'll see you in about 5 minutes, everyone.
Tonight's DJNTV show is sponsored in part by Electro Voice, DJ Event Planner, ADJ, NLFX Professional, Promo Only, Newmark, and DJNTV Insiders.